Here's why Corlys Velaryon almost abandoned Rhaenyra at Dragonstone. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe if you love House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, and deep dives into Westerosi lore. Let's begin. Dragonstone. The sea crashes against black volcanic cliffs. Inside the war council chamber, Rhaenyra sits at the painted table, her face tense. The sea snake, Corlys Velaryon, stands apart from her, silent, his hand resting on a cane. The room is heavy with uncertainty. When Corlys Velaryon returned from the brink of death, the Black faction expected him to be Rhaenyra's greatest champion. For years, he had stood by her claim, marrying her to his son Laenor, tying House Velaryon's unmatched fleet and wealth to her cause. He was the sea snake, the legendary Lord of the Tides, the richest man in Westeros, and the single most powerful ally the Blacks could hope to have. But when Corlys finally set foot on Dragonstone after his long absence, he did something no one expected. He hesitated. He questioned Rhaenyra. He questioned the war. And for a moment, a dangerous, heart-stopping moment, it seemed that Corlys Velaryon might abandon the princess he had once sworn to support. Why? What drove the sea snake, a man who had risked everything to see Rhaenyra crowned, to consider turning his back on her at the very height of her need? Tonight, we dive deep into Corlys Velaryon's doubt. We'll explore his ambitions, his loyalty, and the heavy cost of the Dance of the Dragons that nearly shattered his alliance with Rhaenyra forever. Because even the mightiest ships drift when the tides change. And for Corlys Velaryon, those tides came crashing down at Dragonstone. Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake. Before we can understand why Corlys almost abandoned Rhaenyra, we must understand the man himself. Corlys Velaryon was not born to follow. He was born to conquer the seas. From a young age, he sought adventure beyond the shores of Westeros, sailing farther than any lord before him. His legendary voyages to Lung and even the Jade Sea earned him a fortune so vast that the Velaryons became the richest house in the realm. But Corlys' ambitions didn't end at wealth. He wanted legacy. By marrying his children into House Targaryen, he hoped to bind his bloodline to the Iron Throne itself. His union with Princess Rhaenys, the queen who never was the first step. Their son Laenor's marriage to Rhaenyra was the second. When Viserys named Rhaenyra his heir, Corlys' dream seemed within reach. His grandchildren would sit on the Iron Throne. But dreams have a cost. By the time of the Dance of the Dragons, Corlys had paid dearly. He had lost Lena, his daughter, to the flames of Vhagar. He had lost Laenor, at least in the eyes of the realm, in the scandal that followed his supposed death. And when he sailed to the Stepstones to reclaim his glory in one last campaign, he nearly lost his life as well, returning gravely wounded. Corlys Velaryon was a man who had spent everything, wealth, blood, and strength, for a throne he did not sit upon. And when he came back from his sickbed, the realm was already on fire. The breaking point, Corlys returns to Dragonstone. Corlys' return to Dragonstone should have been a triumphant moment. Instead, it was tense. While he recovered from his illness, the realm had shifted. Aegon II had been crowned by the Greens in King's Landing. The High Towers controlled the Red Keep. The war had begun without him. When Corlys limped into the council chamber, leaning on his cane, he was greeted by Rhaenyra and her supporters, Daemon, Jace, and Rhaenys. But Corlys was no longer the bold sea snake they remembered. He was cautious, hardened. "I have returned to find the realm in chaos," he said coldly. "And I will not see my house destroyed for ambition that is not our own." For the first time, Corlys questioned everything. He looked at Rhaenyra, once the bright hope of his house, and saw a queen beset by enemies. He saw Otto Hightower tightening his grip on King's Landing. He saw the risk of his fleet being annihilated if he chose the wrong side. Even his wife, Rhaenys, urged caution. After all, Rhaenyra had failed to protect Laenor, and now their grandchildren, Baela and Rhaena, were political pawns in this bloody game. Corlys was no fool. He understood war. He knew that ships sink and men die when they sail into the wrong storm. And for the first time, he wondered if backing Rhaenyra had been a mistake. Why Corlys considered abandoning Rhaenyra. Corlys' doubt came from more than fear of defeat. It was rooted in three key concerns. 1. The cost of war. Corlys Velaryon had built his fortune on trade and conquest, not reckless battles. He knew that an open war with the Greens would devastate the realm's shipping lanes, ruin the Velaryon fleet, and bleed his house dry. If the Blacks lost, House Velaryon would be destroyed. The sea snake's lifetime of ambition would sink beneath the waves. He asked himself, was Rhaenyra worth the risk? 2. The question of legitimacy. Though Corlys had supported Rhaenyra for years, whispers of her children's parentage had reached even him. Jace, Luke, and Joffrey bore the features of Harwin Strong, not Laenor Velaryon. Did Corlys truly want to stake his fleet and the survival of his house on a queen whose claim was already stained by scandal? These doubts gnawed at him, especially after his near death. Facing mortality changes a man. For the first time, Corlys thought less about ambition and more about survival. 3. Rhaenyra's resolve. When Corlys returned to Dragonstone, he found a Rhaenyra who was grieving and isolated, weighed down by betrayal and loss. Viserys was dead. Aegon too wore the crown, and Rhaenyra, though strong, was on the defensive. Corlys had seen what happened to those who backed the wrong claimant. He wondered if she truly had the strength or the allies to win. In that moment, abandoning Rhaenyra was not treason in his mind. It was pragmatism. But then, Daemon spoke. The turning tide. Daemon Targaryen understood Corlys Velaryon better than anyone. The Rogue Prince was not a man of diplomacy, but he knew how to speak to ambition. He reminded Corlys of everything the Sea Snake had built, and everything he stood to lose if the Greens won. If Aegon sits the throne, Daemon warned, the Hightowers will strip you of Driftmark the moment it suits them. Your bloodline will vanish from history. But if Rhaenyra wins, your house will rise higher than ever before. Your grandchildren will sit upon the Iron Throne itself. Corlys did not answer immediately, but Rhaenys, his wife, his anchor, placed a hand on his shoulder and spoke the words that changed everything. Do not let fear make you small. We are Velaryons. We do not drift, we sail. Those words, simple but fierce, reminded Corlys of who he was. He was the Sea Snake, the man who had crossed the Jade Sea and returned with riches no lord in Westeros could match. He had not built his legacy by retreating. And so, slowly, Corlys turned back toward Rhaenyra. He pledged his fleet. He pledged his gold. And with that, the war for the Iron Throne truly began. Why he stayed? In the end, Corlys Velaryon chose Rhaenyra not out of sentiment, but out of calculation and conviction. Ambition. Backing Rhaenyra still offered him the greatest reward, a Velaryon bloodline on the throne. Strategy. The Sea Snake knew the Greens depended on King's Landing's ports and trade. His fleet could choke them into submission. Loyalty. For all his doubts, Corlys respected.